let's just kind of go through the SEC, and these teams are the exact teams in the exact order in which Vegas was predicting these teams to finish in the SEC or best chances to win their conference. Okay, so that's kind of the same teams. They put those odds out to yes make the playoffs or no in that right column not make the playoffs. So you got Georgia at the top, and Georgia is the number one favorite in all of the country at minus 500 to make the playoffs. So if you are not a gambler, let's put it in some simple terms in which you can understand. So you would have to bet $500 to win $100 for Georgia to make the playoffs. So basically, Vegas is saying, the odds are they're making the playoff, right? And for if you wanted to bet and say that Georgia is not going to make the 12-team playoff, and you bet $100, you would get your $100 back and win 360. Okay, so that's what those numbers mean right there. So if they're easy to figure out if you just say, all right, if I, for Texas there, if I would have to bet 230 because that's a negative number. I would have to bet 230 to win $100 for them to make the playoff. So, y'all let me know, Mason. What do you think? What do you think about these? What's the best value on this board here? And I think it's funny that Alabama had a little bit better odds to win the conference, but LSU has got a little bit better odds to make the playoffs. Pretty interesting how that turned out. And I think Tennessee down there at plus 172 to make the playoffs. That's not bad odds there. I'm basically, it looks like Vegas feels like Tennessee is one of those first few teams out, which could possibly mean with an extra win or so, they could be one of those teams that sneaks in that 12-team playoff. So what do you think about this list, and who do you think is more likely to squander their opportunity, and who do you think is more likely to make it? It's obviously going to be more than one on this list, don't you think?
Yeah, if I'm looking at value and I want to make a play against and a play for, like a play for yes and a play for no in this case, or to make the playoffs or not and not make the playoffs, I actually really like the play for Alabama to make the playoffs at plus 124 and for LSU not to make the playoffs at minus 142. Those just given by this graph here are two fringe teams. And I think that you'd end up coming out pretty good, right? Bet $100 and you'd win 124. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. More than double your money on Alabama if they end up making it. I'm feeling better and better about this Alabama team as the spring progresses. They're kind of locking up some recruiting wins. We're hearing some buzz about some of the players that are that we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. But some of the incoming talent, the young freshmen that are looking pretty good in spring ball so far, and I think that people just kind of have written Alabama off and have said Kalen DeBoer is going to have to wait a year to do anything special. While that might be true, this is still one of the best programs in the country, right? I still hold firmly that Kalen DeBoer is one of the best coaches in the country, and it might be a tough year for them. I'm not saying that they'll win the conference or anything like that, but to be top 12 in the country, I think they can do that. And so,
doesn't it feel like their floor is like worst case scenario they finish like ranked 20th or something? Like that seems like the very bottom floor for Alabama. And even with Nick Saban being gone, because Alabama seems like their coaching staff may be better. And I'm not saying obviously head coach excluded there. Nobody's better than Nick Saban, but at that same time, I feel like maybe overall the coaching staff might be a little bit better this year.
Well, I think they definitely upgraded at defensive coordinator. And you could argue offensive coordinator because we know Kalen DeBoer is probably going to be calling the plays for the most part. Even though, he promoted the tight end coach, I think that he's going to have his hand on that. So yeah, I think for those two sides of the ball, we've got, two better coordinators. Playing with the same roster. You got the same clay that you're going to be molding a team out of. And I don't know if it happens in year one. But I think Kalen DeBoer can win a national championship, and I think that he's going to be a perennial playoff contender, or have his team as a perennial playoff contender, and be in it. And I just really don't see there being much of a drop off. This is a team that is just full of 5 stars and 4 stars still. You've got some who are trying to come back into the program that left. I know they lost a few, but it's still Alabama. It's still the brand, and they're going to be just fine. So, not to make this an Alabama segment, but at the same time, I think that that's a pretty good bet. Buy while the stock is down, y'all. Obviously, the stock's down on Alabama. Don't be surprised to see them in playoff football come December and January.
Yeah, I could see it. I could definitely see it. I think if I was gonna, as far as betting goes, like actually trying to take advantage of the numbers, you can't really touch Georgia. You can't really touch Texas.
Mm-hmm.
They've got those two set up to where it's like there's really no sense in betting on those. I mean, I don't see a world in which they don't make the college football playoff unless there was just something crazy happening. And how are you going to bet on like an injury or something, right? So I think Alabama gives you the best value on betting yes to make the college football playoff. And I think Ole Miss would be the team that would give you the best value on voting no to making the college football playoff. And that's not to say that I think Ole Miss is just definitely not going to make the college football playoff. I'm not saying that. There's a Vegas says there's a better chance that they do than they don't with that negative number in the yes column there. So, but my point is, I think that's a pretty good value at plus 100. If you feel like Ole Miss maybe could be one of those first teams out, I could see them finishing 13 or number 13 or 14 and be one of those first teams out. So I think that that's a pretty good possibility if you're looking for some value on this list here of SEC teams.
Hey, so I know you put this list together here. Was Missouri not on the list at all?
Yeah, they were. They
Oh,
were.
okay.
But Missouri was not in the top 6 odds to win the SEC championship.
Okay.
So, and that's where this list originated, and
I
I
got you.
converted it over. So, I can only look, hey, Missouri fans, I'm sorry about that. I probably should have put y'all on there, but you're going to see as we go through these conferences, there's one conference in particular I would love to see if anybody could bet and could guess it in the comment section which one it is. But there's one that they only bothered to put out like a couple of lines out for teams to even make the college football playoff. Yeah, y'all try to guess which conference that is before we get to it here. I bet you can probably guess it.